Hi, everyone. Welcome to this creative arts and movement lesson. Today, we're going to learn about patterns across all disciplines. And that means that this lesson is not only for you, but it gives you ideas and things that you can do in your future classrooms. So, we're going to focus on the gallery as an art gallery all the way to the gym. And so today we're going to emphasize that patterns connect everything we do, from art to movement. Patterns help us predict, understand, and create. So, as we look at the pictures here, we can see that there are patterns in art, of course. There's patterns in words and literature with rhyme and even rhythm. There's symmetry, there's patterns in numbers, and even movement with body patterns. So let's not forget that with Piaget, he developed the DAP, which is developmentally appropriate practice. This means that every lesson that we create should focus on the cognitive levels for your students, not only utilizing Gardner's multiple intelligences, but also making sure that everything is aligned cognitively and developmentally appropriate. So here we have some essential questions. And so you can ask your students each of these questions and ask your students, how do we see? How do we hear? How do we build? And how do we move patterns throughout our days? And you can ask them about each individual subject. How do artists use patterns? In literature, how do authors and poets create patterns with words and rhyme and repetition? And in math, what represents patterns? Where do we see shapes and symmetry and measurements? And in PE and movement, of course, we're using our bodies as patterns. So it's important for us to translate our goals into kid friendly language. And this will help them to connect our goals to success. So give your students about 30 seconds to think about this hook and send them on a pattern hunt. Have them look around the classroom and see where they can find patterns. It can be anything, not just shapes. And then you'll want to call on students to tell you what patterns they found and give them a few examples like tiles or objects in the classroom or patterns on the floor, anything of that nature. So now let's look at art. And so let's take them into this visual thinking strategies and let's ask them, what do they see? What do they think is happening? What does this pattern make you feel? And what mood or movement supports that evidence? So, this is a great way to connect visual repetitiveness to math ideas. Next, we have some literature patterns. Have them read this poem, or you can find another age appropriate poem that has a lot of repetition and rhyme. Have them read it just for the flow, or you read it for them, or have them read it in groups. Then have them read it again, but to snap or clap or stomp whenever they hear repetitive words. And then later, after you've gone through it, you can ask them which words or phrases were repeated and why do they think the author repeated those words or phrases. Next, we have the math component. So, of course, there's all types of patterns and symmetry and measurement. So here you can set up three stations in your classroom. One that looks at patterned blocks. So you can have them repeat shapes in a pattern over and over and over, like the example. Then you can have another station that has symmetry. You can put them together in pairs. You can use a grid paper or just a regular piece of paper, have them folded in half, and one person draws a shape, and then the other person has to make that same shape, but on the other half. They have to replicate it to show symmetry. The third station is all about measurement. So here we've used like a patterned walk, like maybe bricks or tiles, things of that nature, and have them measure the short steps, the long steps, and have them record it. Have them record each segments and describe the type of pattern. Lastly, we have creative in movement. So here you can create your own line dance or teach them a line dance. And you can show them that with our bodies, we can create movement, patterns, rhythm, repetition. So you can start with something on the lower level that's just a step touch, something in the middle that's marching, reaching up, or mirror poses, all kinds of things. And then after you've taught them the line dance, then you can talk about repetition, rhythm, movement, and patterns. So after you've done all of the activities, it's time to do a little bit of formative assessment or checking for understanding. So you can ask them, where did you notice patterns in all of the lessons of today? Where do you see and feel movement? Where did you see symmetry? And before you know it, they're going to be noticing patterns, movement, and symmetry everywhere. And give them a chance to explain and share throughout the class. And don't forget that this lesson is a perfect example of differentiation. It also provides plenty of UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, because we always need to make sure we have multiple means of engagement, representation, and expression. We always want to make sure that we tap into any of the students' interests. That's why we've got art, we have literature, we have movement, we have music. And then we also want to make sure that we have visual, auditory, and hands on activities. And then we're demonstrating all the different ways to discover patterns, symmetry, rhythm, movement, and so on. And so for a closure and for a close activity, you can ask the students, you can have them do a reflection. You can use a 6-word reflection closure where they can either verbally give 6 words, visually, they can point to things, or they can write it. And you can ask them these 2 questions or come up with your own. So, how did you see patterns today? Or how did patterns connect today? Did you see any patterns differently? You can even ask them this about symmetry or anything of that nature. So get creative, and I can't wait to see your assignments and your lessons.